Bob Seeley is a former Conservative MP. He's a military expert. He's author of Total War, about new forms of warfare in the 21st century. And we're going to talk to him a bit about the Middle East in a minute or two. But Bob, I know you're very familiar with what goes on and what has been going on for some time in South Africa. Did the President have a point?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, I visited Zimbabwe 15 years ago when that murdering thug, that murdering Marxist, Robert Mugabe, was clinging to power by destroying his agricultural industry in Zimbabwe, by directly attacking Zimbabwe's white farmers. Because they were efficient, because they were outside his control, and because he could use them as, vile European leaders throughout from the Middle Ages onwards have effectively used the Jews as a useful sort of ethnic, capitalist sort of target for his ugly tribal politics. And there's no doubt that South Africa is doing the same. A little bit of sympathy for Cyril Ramaphosa. I think he's the least corrupt of South Africa's leaders in recent years, since Mandela, who's a good man. But I think what's fascinating here, Peter, is the way that Donald Trump, like him or not, is turning the Oval Office into something approaching, the finale of The Apprentice. And effectively, he's brought in South Africa's leader and he's just said, "You're fired."
Well, it certainly is a dramatic development, and clearly Ramaphosa not expecting it. I wonder how much of a difference it will.
Total ambush.
Yeah.
Total ambush. Every world leader now is going to think about, do I actually want to go into the Oval Office?
Yes.
What is going to happen to me? I mean, we had Starmer, King Adenoid, go in there and sort of just physically sort of sweating away like he was a sort of...
What's he going to say? What's he going to do?
Yeah,
and Zilinski, of course, I was on air when it happened, when Zilinski was brought in, and that turned into a huge row. Ramaphosa seemed to slightly take it in his stride. I was sort of oddly impressed with the fact that he just went, "Oh, right, tell me where this is and give me the details and I'll look into it." It can be very difficult, especially when you've got the world's media looking at you, to know how to react when that happens.
Yeah, I mean, look, it wasn't the worst reaction. I thought the way that Trump treated Zelensky was appalling. Whether or not Zelensky played his hand perfectly, actually he shouldn't have done it. But this is Trump's style, and look, he knows how to get noticed as a world leader, not only because he's the leader of the US, but effectively you never know what's going to happen with him. And as I say, he's just turned the Oval Office into just a massive entertainment draw, because he's calling in these world leaders, and you don't know what's going to happen to them, whether they're going to play him like Macron did, as much as you can dislike or like Macron. Starmer looked visibly nervous and rather shaking when he was in there. He turned over Zelensky, foolishly in my opinion, but I think he's absolutely got a point here. The fact is that black African states have been turning on their white farmers for decades.
He did use the word genocide, though, and we've got to be really careful about that word, because it has a specific meaning, and whilst there are horrendous things that are happening to many white farmers in South Africa, I'm not denying that for a second. That was a huge exaggeration by Donald Trump.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a technical and legal term for genocide, and you can go. I'm sure that you can find a lawyer who would interpret it either way. Are you saying it's? I wouldn't call it genocide personally. Oppression of people, I think you've got to be pretty careful.
Yeah.
And I know the bar has been lowered in recent decades, but actually the original genocides, you go back to World War II, potentially before, but you look at Nazi treatment of the Jews.
Sure, so Srebrenica and Rwanda and places like that, which,
But even Srebrenica wasn't necessarily, look, it was a mass murder. I'm not sure if you're then into genocide. So, yeah, the term is being misused, but sadly Trump is not the first person to misuse the term. But if you're trying to destroy white farmers as a class, you've arguably got a case there that it is absolutely systemic, and it is a way of, playing the ugliest form of class, but also race politics. So I'm sure somebody could actually make a credible case for that.
Speaking of somewhere else where the phrase genocide is often misused, there is clearly a case in Israel that the UK government believes anyway that it has gone beyond just self-defence. Intolerable attacks on Gaza. David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, has been talking about this in Parliament yesterday. I just want to play a clip now of what he was saying then, and then ask Bob about it. And actually the Israeli Ambassador CP Hodaveli, who's been interviewed, I've interviewed her on this programme a number of times, she was called in by the Foreign Office and told that trade talks are going to be suspended. Let's see what David Lammy said in Parliament yesterday, and then I'll get Bob's reaction.
Netanyahu's government is planning to drive Gazans from their homes into a corner of the Strip to the south and permit them a fraction of the aid that they need. Yesterday, Minister Smodrik even spoke of Israeli forces cleansing Gaza. Destroying what's left of residents, Palestinians, being relocated, he said, to third countries. We must call this what it is. It is extremism. It is dangerous. It is repellent. It is monstrous, and I condemn it in the strongest possible terms.
Well, the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, has been talking. He's been giving a press conference in the last few minutes, and he says that war will continue until all parts of Gaza are under Israeli control. I wonder, Bob, what you make of both Prime Minister Netanyahu and indeed the Foreign Secretary David Lammy's comments on the changes that have happened in regard to the UK's relationship with Israel over the past few hours.
I have to say I'm not a particular fan of either of them. But
Me too.
I think, look, the problem is with Lammy, he has zero credibility after his sort of student politics before he got into power. And I don't really buy what he says on Israel, and I don't really buy what the Labour Party says on Israel, because of their desperate sort of battle to keep their Muslim vote in the UK. What's happening, look, I despair what's happening to the Palestinians, but there is a simple problem here that Hamas is a genocidal organisation, truly genocidal, because they just want to kill every Jew. Okay, I mean, that's pretty much in their constitution. So they're a genocidal organisation. They seek and glorify in the slaughter of Jewish human beings, which personally I find repugnant and disgusting. And they use the Palestinians as effectively tools to fight their war. And the more that they can encourage, the more that they can hide their own military within hospitals, in schools, the more they can get Palestinian kids slaughtered, the more that they can parade
it's a propaganda victory, and I agree with every single word you've said, Bob.
And you see these fools then who march every Saturday clogging up London. If I was Jewish, I would feel hugely uncomfortable walking around these vile people.
The problem is, though,
they're
Bob, sorry, we're just running out of time, Bob, and sorry to rush you, but I just want to ask you two more questions. The problem is, though, that there is a humanitarian crisis in Gaza. There's no doubt about that. And as someone, both of us are big supporters of Israel, not necessarily the Israeli government, but certainly the state. But it's becoming increasingly difficult to defend what is happening in Gaza. And I just wonder what your thought is in terms of what the best way to apply pressure. I'm not talking about the Israeli government necessarily, although that's part of it, but also on Hamas to free the hostages and to end this war.
Hamas have got a choice. They can free the... Look, I mean, the problem is, you've said it yourself. Hamas are keeping other people hostage, and this war ends when Hamas stops treating people as hostages and actually puts down its weapons. But the problem is, since 2007, Hamas has used the Gaza Strip as a recruitment ground, as effectively a source of income, which it has always used, therefore, or always since used, in order to plan attacks to kill Jews. And instead of actually trying to develop the economy of the Gaza Strip, trying to help the people there, it has always misused, when it has been able to do so, aid to build weapons that kill Jews. And that is the fundamental problem here.
Final question, Bob. This flotilla story, the Dunkirk commemorative flotilla of little ships going across the channel, commemorating the bravery of that evacuation, being told to divert because of a migrant boat keeping 1 nautical mile between them. What is your reaction to that, Bob?
I just think it's one of those stories that sums up in a really depressing way the age that we live in. I think the migrant boat should have been shoved back to France, and our glorious little boats should have been able to go to Dunkirk. And I just think it's the sort of thing that makes people despair and think, well, what the hell is happening to our country?
Bob, thank you. That's Bob Seeley there, Dr. Bob Seeley, former Conservative MP and a military expert.